and so you remain, and you stay in people's minds, because when he was gone, I mean, Neil wrote something in the liner notes of the record saying that the night seemed darker when he was gone, and that's a perfect way to describe it, is that when he was gone, something was different in the world. You know, a star was no longer there, you know, a star in the sky had gone out. And I think that's how you know when somebody really special has departed, is that, you know, your world feels different.
Yeah, it's true. You said he was, you know, the greatest father anyone could hope for.
You're gonna get me crying now.
In what way was that especially true?
Parenting is so difficult. I mean, I'm a parent myself, and I know, you know, how hard it is to be there 100% for your kids, and that's our relationship was you know, really special that way, because we somehow were really in tune with each other, and I think that he, even though he traveled so much, he was always there for me in every possible way. I mean, in anything I ever wanted to attempt to do, he was always behind it 100%. Was never the kind of person who said, you know, you can't do that. You know, it was always, of course you can do it. You can do anything you want. You know, if you put your mind to it, you can absolutely do it. And, you know, having that kind of encouragement, both my parents were like that. You know, there was never a question that you couldn't do something. You know, of course you can do it. And that kind of love and that kind of unconditional caring for somebody is really what parenting is about. And they, you know, they were the best, because they were always there.
What was his relationship like with Gene Krupa? What kind of vibe was between them? Was it real, like, healthy competition? Were they just friends who didn't really think of themselves as competitors? Or
I think Buddy and Gene were really good friends. Not too many people know that my dad met my mother, who was dating Gene at the time. And he met her at a Jazz at the Philharmonic concert, and went up there and just destroyed Gene in the drum battle that night, and then came down and asked her out, right under Gene's nose. I mean, that takes, you know, whatever. And asked her to marry him on the first date, and 6 months later they were married. I'm not sure Gene was real happy about, you know, that situation, but after that they were pretty good friends. You know, Buddy had a real affinity for Gene, you know, because he was really the one that blazed the trail, you know, as bringing drummers out of the background and bringing that to the forefront, and being a showman, and sort of being the focal point of the band. And Buddy just took it to the next level.
Yeah, that's amazing. Sort of reminds me how was like George Harrison was going out with some woman, and then she ended up marrying Eric Clapton.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah, I forgot her name, but
that's right.
Yeah, it's just like yeah, but at the same time, he was the showman and he was the center of the band. But it seemed like the music always was key. It was at the center. He knew when to sort of, you know, let you know, the horn section rise and take. It seemed like he was always he was subordinate to the overall sound and of each song. But at the same time, when he came in, you know, it was, you know, explosive and incredible.
I think that's, you know, all part of that talent, is knowing when to pull back and when to, you know, really go for it. And it was always about the music, and that never suffered. You know, something could be going on in his life that was really, you know, disastrous, and still he was on the bandstand that night, you know, playing like nothing was wrong. And it was just always about, you know, he said, people pay their money to come in here and see me and get away from their problems. So I'm not going to bring my problems out onto the bandstand. And, you know, that was really the philosophy, was that you went out there and you just, you know, did it all. And then you went home and cried, or whatever you felt like doing. But you don't bring it out, you know, to the audience.
Cool. I think we should be set.
Yeah. I think we're gonna stop.
Good. Great.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sure.
Need a tissue or anything? I got
Just one eye started to water over here in the corner.
I got up to Barbara Walters.
Those are actually really good questions, because I get asked some really stupid questions.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What are those stupid ones?
Yeah, what was...
They're always fun.
Do you play the drums? Yes. Yes, I do. I mean, that's usually one that everyone will ask. Do you play the drums? No. Why would I want to do that? I wouldn't even attempt to do something like that.
Yeah, it's like.
Or how did you get your last name? Like,
Yeah. There you go. That's one. What was it like?
Ready?
Yeah. You were interested in, you wanted to play big band music. That was something you were really interested in trying in between Rush records. How is it that you decided to choose Buddy for this and then turn it into a tribute record, to do his music?
Yeah, there was kind of a series of coincidences almost that aligned to make this seem almost predestined, but I had always been interested in big band music from a drummer's point of view because apart from Rush, it's the only other style that I could imagine myself being satisfied with because it's organized and very architecturally structured, and yet there's a lot of freedom for the players within it, especially for the drummer, in terms of being a supportive role as well as playing ensemble and then having the freedom within those figures to do what you like. So I'd followed kind of, grown up with the music of Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Glenn Miller, and Sinatra, and Tony Bennett, and so on. And always liked it, but again, rock music was what I liked to play, and a rock drummer was what I was for a long time. And then in '91, Cathy Rich, Buddy's daughter, asked me to perform at a Memorial Scholarship Fund concert, and I thought, okay, here's my big chance to dive into it, and the timing was right and everything, so I went into that. But there were 6 drummers involved in the live performance, so there were definitely technical difficulties in getting the monitors, and the relationship of where the band was to where I was on the stage and so on resulted in it being a less than satisfying experience. So being a logical positivist, I turned it around and decided, well, what I have to do is do it again and do it right. So I kind of had that in my mind over the last couple of years. And then I found out earlier this year that our tour was going to be ending a couple of months early, and I had the rare and precious gift of a couple of months of free time. So I was thinking about how best to spend that time, whether to go off on an adventure or work on my writing projects or get back to the big band drumming thing. And the timing seemed right for that, so I conceived the idea. Really all I wanted to do was play some big band jazz, and I really wished someone else would produce a tribute record so I could just play on it, but it seemed unlikely that anyone else was going to come forward in a couple of months and book my special window of opportunity for that to happen. So I thought, well, I better do it myself. So I contacted Cathy and certainly wanted her blessing from the family side of things, and also she has a lot of contacts in the drumming community through her work in the Scholarship Fund concerts that would make it easier to contact people and put it together. So her response was positive, and together we started compiling a list of drummers that we thought were appropriate, some of them who had performed at the concerts before, some others just for their prominence in the drumming community today, and certainly for their excellence too, because it is very demanding music to play and very technically difficult, so we needed people, regardless of their name, who could do the job. So it eventually became that process, and that started in January, and then by May we were recording, and we had our drummers, and Cathy assembled the musicians for the band, all but 2 of whom came from Buddy's original big band, so there was a lot of history assembled there, and some of the veteran drummers that we used too reflected the historical perspective of it, with Max Roach and Joe Morello and Ed Shaughnessy, who were Buddy's peers and his friends and worked alongside him many times. But as well, we had a lot of younger drummers from the contemporary music scene who were prominent in jazz or in session work, or rock drummers like Matt Sorum from Guns N' Roses and Kenny Aronoff from John Mellencamp, and just tried to get as wide-ranging a stylistic range of drummers as we could, but at the same time prominent and excellent ones who would be suitable. Appropriate was the word I used for the job.
So you knew that in doing whatever it was you were going to do with Buddy's music, that you were going to be part of it, and not, it wasn't, you're going to be saying, okay, I'm going to play everything on this record. You knew it wanted to be much larger in scope.
In the spirit of the tribute, I thought it was appropriate to have a wide-ranging variety of other drummers, and also for me to play the rock-flavored arrangements would have been less of a stretch, but consequently less of a challenge, so it personally interested me less. The same as I just mentioned Kenny Aronoff. He's another one who came in as predominantly a rock drummer. His whole background was rock. But like me, he chose to record tunes that were the farthest distant from his usual drumming activities as he could. So he chose very traditional and very difficult swing tunes. And that was my personal approach too. So it really, I never thought about doing it all myself. I really wanted to get as many drummers involved as I could and make it that kind of a tribute from the whole drumming fraternity, really is what I would call it. And that was the conception from the outset, really. I didn't want to do it myself, and I wasn't really interested in playing the rock-flavored things either.
Beyond just, assembling drummers who were maybe technically proficient or just had a great reputation, I mean, what specific kind of qualities were you looking for in the people that you asked to be involved with the project?
The operative word really would be excellence. People that, regardless of their backgrounds, who exemplified something fresh in drumming or something tremendously accomplished in drumming that made them deserve to be there. The great thing about Buddy's music that made the tribute so easy in some ways was his repertoire spans 40 years of music, from the late 40s right up till the 80s when he passed away. And he was a restless musician, and consequently he kept adding new styles of music. Anytime something changed in music, when rock style came in, he started to use that. He commissioned arrangers to produce music like that for him. And he would never play old music at all, and he used to growl about people coming to see him that thought it was going to be a Tommy Dorsey revival, because that's not what he was about at all. So as his music developed through the decades, we had rock pieces for somebody like Matt Sorum from Guns N' Roses. We had Beulah Witch, which was a very rock-flavored arrangement from the 80s that he could shine on. Other funk-flavored ones for drummers who preferred or excelled in that style. There aren't any other drummer band leaders who would allow that scope of material, and really few other figures in contemporary music whose songbook would span such a wide variety of styles through such a long period of time.
Was it that quality of Buddy's music, and was it also maybe an element of the determination that he always brought to his art that was especially inspiring to you to come to him?
Certainly as a person, his restlessness and his strength of will were what caused all that to happen. The richness of the wide-rangingness of his repertoire was a function of himself as a man. Like I said, he liked to be moving forward all the time and keep his music changing and growing, and he was always hiring young musicians to play in his band. He was always commissioning young arrangers to create fresh music for the band to play. So that is certainly part of the wealth of material that I really only discovered how deep it went when I started to put this project together.
As a producer involved with this, what kind of spirit were you trying to harness and really bring to life on the record?
Good spirit. I don't know. That seems self-evident in some ways, I guess, that there was so much great music there available, and so many great musicians to play it, that seemed to focus itself in the direction that I wanted to go. So I didn't have to make those kind of decisions. I just had, okay, here's the idea, and here's this wealth of material to draw from. So it became then a process of matching up drummers to specific material, either what they wanted to play or what would be suitable for them if they didn't know the repertoire. Some drummers knew Buddy's music well enough to say, well, I want to play this song or this song, and other ones would say, well, I don't care, send me some and I'll learn them. Other ones, in my case, I said I wanted a fast swing tune and a medium swing tune, and other people like Bill Cobham came in and said, I don't care, whatever you want me to play, I'll play. So from a producer's point of view, that was very helpful to me, because there were gaps in the repertoire of the music that I wanted to present just as a complete musical program that I really wanted. So when Bill came in, I said, well, Bill, do Milestones for me. That's one I'd really like to have, because it's one of Buddy's nicest arrangements, and no one was doing it up till then.
When was this recorded specifically?
During 2 weeks in May.
And what studio?
At the Power Station.
That's
in New York.
Okay. What was in the studio? What was the whole atmosphere and the vibe like?
Right from the beginning, really, the commitment from all of the musicians was remarkable. And then once it became obvious that everyone was going to be involved, and I was always consulting people on how they felt about their solo on this take versus that take, and if any of the musicians had any problems with the performance, they should come into the control room and listen to it and tell us what was wrong and how we could fix it. And interestingly, a lot of these people who have been, hired horn players for years and years had never been asked their opinion before. So when I'd ask them, what did they think of this, or what did they think of that, or how can we make that better, they were flattered to be that much considered. And the result of that was their commitment to their project and their willingness to do anything. They'd stay after to work on something, or before we did a take, all the sax players would be rehearsing their part, together to make sure that it was right. And that made all the difference, of course. And then there was so much shared memories among all these musicians, because although they'd all worked in buddies' bands, not all necessarily at the same time, or some of them had or crossed over during different periods of time. So immediately, when there were any breaks in the recording, the stories started to come out and the laughter flowed. And then my job as motivator would come in, because I'd have to come in and break up all that. Okay, guys, we're ready to go, back to the work. So really, I came to refine my job within the